What evil prank have you pulled off? Mom can't tolerate sweet things. Since she can remember, she never ate sweets. When I was 6 or so, during breakfast, Mom left her newly brewed coffee on the table. My older brother encouraged me to put more sugar as a prank, so I did. Mom came back, stirred and then drank and spit out a rocket. We started laughing, saying it was a prank, explaining that we put extra sugar in it. She looked at us as if we were stupid. Apparently I put salt instead. Her coffee was at sea salt level. This might stupidly be the funniest comment in the thread. My co-workers in the Chicago office asked me to bring back a phone book and the hotel stationery from my business trip to Kansas City. They were preparing for another co-worker's bachelor party for the night before the wedding. The groom was known for drinking to an extent that was considered legendary. After a night of drinking, he woke up on the morning of his wedding in a hotel room. He checked the nightstand and found the Kansas City phone book. The desk was stocked with KC stationery. His friends had clued the front desk staff in on what was happening and convinced them to answer his room phone good morning and welcome to the Kansas City Holiday Inn. It was 5 hours till the wedding, and he was actually only a couple miles from the venue, but the freakout was epic. This is sublime. I have an extra mouse in my desk drawer at work. I have the USB plugged into the docking station of the obnoxious guy a couple cubes away. On days he is particularly obnoxious, I will take out the extra mouse and move it around every few minutes. He has never realized because it's plugged into the docking station and not his laptop. He has even had the laptop replaced. Never noticed. It brings me to tears, silently laughing sometimes. I have to be careful not to overdo it. The old wireless mouse. Nice work. I've posted this before, but I made a friend believe she was being followed by a guard gnome. For years, many of her friends are involved plus other helpers. She shows up at a B&B in Scotland that we'd recommended, and there was a gnome in the garden, and it looked exactly like the gnome that had briefly turned up in her yard. Then she saw it on her way to work, then in Provence and Germany. It really did look like the same gnome. It was. This kills the crab. Gradually over the course of 2 weeks moved my co-worker's monitors closer to the front edge of the desk, like 1/4 per move, until they were so close the keyboard barely fit. Stupid small desk, she grumbled. Near the end, I then moved them back, just as slowly, over a few weeks. She never caught on. Michael. I used to work for a cruise line. A passenger asked if the crew lives on the ship full time. I and my co-worker explained that no, the crew leaves every night to fly back to Miami and then returns each morning. She walked away satisfied. After that cruise was over, our manager was sharing the passenger evaluations with us and was confused about one in particular. It was a woman who had stayed on deck 14 and had complained that she couldn't sleep at night because of the noise of the crew helicopter. Fact 1. 1,200 crew do not leave every night but do live on the ship. Fact 2. That ship didn't even have a helipad. Question. WTF was she hearing every night? Someone in the next cabin using helicopter sounds as ambient noise to sleep. People in school used to always take my Gatorade. So I took an empty bottle, filled it with dyed salt water, and let them take my drink. Not gonna lie, it was hilarious watching one person to spit salt water in the middle of class only for their unbelieving friend to do the same. Picked out every last marshmallow from my sister's box of Lucky Charms. Then took a photo of me eating a bowl of Just Charms, printed it, and put in the bottom of the bag. I then sealed the bag back up, hot glued the box, and back in the pantry it went. This isn't a prank, this is the work of Satan. I lived in Korea for a bit. When my mom came to visit, I told my Korean girlfriend it was an American custom to greet older women by touching elbows. I told my mom the same story about Korean customs. It was a thing of beauty. They were not pleased. In India we touch the feet of our elders to get their blessings. I wonder if someone is pranking us since the last 5,000 years. That cheeky mother. Over a decade ago I worked in the warehouse of a guitar center. We dealt with inventory, shipping and receiving. We had a dumpster behind the store in a shared parking lot that people would leave random things in even though it was not a public dumpster. One day we found a broken beach chair in an open cardboard box. The box had a shipping label on it. It was left in such a way that it was easy to assume that the chair box combo was left by the same person. We packed the beach chair in another box and shipped it back to the customer. I wish I was there to see the person's face when they received their trash back via UPS. Haha, I did something similar, but nowhere near this epic. There is a used bookstore that I go to sometimes. This bookstore sells used postcards. I bought a few that had been previously sent 20-30 years prior. I then slapped a fresh stamp on them and tossed them into the mailbox. I wish I could have seen the people's reaction when they showed up. I worked at a fast food where the boss was too cheap to get AC installed. In the super hot summer days we would all sweat so much that we could wring sweat out of our uniforms. There was this boy who I had a love-hate relationship with. We would always prank each other but mine were always tame. Until one day, he left his drink in the back while he was flipping burgers. I grabbed a vinegar packet, cut open a corner and put a straw directly into it and exchanged it with the straw from his drink. Moments later, I was in the front of the store and I heard him spit and scream my name while calling me a B. He still high-fived me. That's a good friend. The high five showed you he appreciated the prank and there were no hard feelings. I'm sure you were on guard for quite a while after that though. One night I replaced every framed object in my boss's office with a picture of me making a stern face. Posters, certificates, photos, etc. Took like 3 hours because he had like 30 framed things in his office. The next day I made sure I was out doing field work to make him sit with it most of the day. He had a lot of foot traffic to look at his office that day. My mum's laptop wallpaper was a picture of her granddaughter. I copied the picture 100 times and made her wallpaper a slideshow of the same picture over and over again, so the file would change but nothing would change visibly on the monitor. The pictures would change every 10 seconds. On one of the images I painted a tiny little curly mustache on her. So randomly for 10 seconds my niece would have a mustache. My mum thought she was either losing her mind or had a computer virus and every time the mustache popped up, it was gone by the time she tried to show anyone. I remember it like it was yesterday. At summer camp my cabin's leaders found a little snake that wasn't doing so well so they decided to put it in an old terrarium in our cabin. A few of the guys were nervous about it. So the next day when the leaders decided the snake was well enough to release, I asked that they keep quiet about releasing it. When the other guys got back to the cabin and found no snake in the terrarium, chaos ensued. Not a prank I pulled off, but one I was victim to. My manager had left me in charge of the store when I was 16. Not legal but that's a whole other mess. For a whole weekend. Saturday went well and I was happy with how I went, although my paranoid brain is always concerned about whether or not doors are actually locked. I'm the same with my house, but the store was worse. So I make my dad drive down to the store to double check that everything is okay. 15 minutes later I get a phone call from him saying, "Manager, and the police are here because the door was unlocked and people were inside." Cue to me on the floor in tears hyperventilating, while my dad is telling my mum, who had since picked up the phone, that he was only kidding and that everything was fine. How to induce a panic attack 101. One year, my sister had to move back into my parents' house. I was like 15. She was a little older, mid-20s. April Fool's comes, and I know my sister woke up at like 6 AM. So I took out the light in the kitchen, put Vaseline all on the refrigerator handle, and put a rubber band around the water gun on the sink. I waited for her to go in the kitchen. I was in my room pretending to be asleep, and all I heard was crap, followed by a crap, followed by her screaming my name and waking up my parents. My parents were not happy. Floor was soaked with water, and it woke both of them up. I'd do it again though. I did that, but I did it with black electrical tape, and then promptly forgot about it. Cue the next morning at 8 AM when my stepfather tried to use the sink and got blasted in the face with cold water. Peeled the tape off and didn't say a word about it. I expected him to blow up, but he didn't. I was 9. My dad just had hernia surgery the day prior and was recuperating on the couch. Before I left for school, I put the Martha Stewart channel on and left the remote just beyond his reach. He spent 8 hours learning how to arrange pillows on a bed. He exacted his revenge 15 years later. I just had my emergency C-section and he put Frozen on and left it on a loop while the entire family left for the mall and left the remote just out of my reach. Revenge is indeed a dish best served cold. Wow, he really didn't let it go after all those years. Welded a co-worker's boot to the floor. He had worn out the toe caps on his steel-toed boots while he was making a weld kneeling inside a large piece of equipment on steel. I put a small tack weld on his boot so he had trouble breaking it loose and getting up. OSHA would like to know your location. One that was played on me. I took my SATs, college entrance exams, for those outside the US on the 1st of April. Should have known, right? But apparently, I'm not that smart. That night I went out with a group of friends, and when I got home my mom met me with a serious look on her face. She told me that a testing committee had called, that there had been an error and all test papers from that day were lost. Everyone was being contacted to schedule a date to retake the exam. She totally sold it. Face, reactions, everything. I bought it hook, line, and sinker, and she let me believe it until lunchtime the next day. My mom is a diabolical person. The fact that she let you believe it until the next day is evil, lol. I put hot sauce on my little brother's toothpaste one morning when we were kids. He apparently thought he was being poisoned. My sister rubbed my toothbrush on the bar of soap once. I would have preferred hot sauce. My friend was the kind of dude who when he got a few beers in him would go into 30-minute monologues about how bad the prequel trilogies were. He had 3 impressionable young sons. I bought them all of the Gungan Star Wars action figures. They became their favorite toys to play with. Early days of networked PCs. DOS and NetWare. I worked in a computer lab on campus. There weren't a lot of management utilities available at the time, so I, and a few other student employees, wrote batch scripts and small programs to automate a few things when a student or professor would log onto the network. Having that sort of access led to numerous pranks being pulled, but most of us were savvy enough to figure it out and undo the prank. However, we had 2 co-workers who liked to loaf a bit too much for our liking. They were not at all technical and had taken the lab assistant job because they thought it was easy money. They had conspired to be assigned to a remote classroom lab that rarely had any students in it who would need assistance. For most of their working hours, they would just sit around and play games on the PCs while the rest of us were, you know, working. Clearly this could not stand. I rewrote a piece of code that was executed when every single user signed on. If the username was either one of these 2 and they were signing in on a PC in that remote classroom and it was during their working hours, it would look at an innocuous file on the network. The file merely had a few bytes in it which noted how long it had been since this prank had last been triggered, ensuring that it would run once or twice a week maximum. If it did activate, it would launch a terminate and stay resident program which would wait a random time between 5-15 minutes and then drop an image of 2 dudes 69ing on the monitor for a few seconds and reboot the PC. Tested it, put the compiled program in place and deleted the source. Much hilarity ensued for the next 2 semesters. Reminds me of one of the Monty Python games. You get on a computer and have to find some information. One of the icons brings up a goat dressed in red lingerie and pantyhose, disables the mouse and keyboard, and Eric Idle starts shouting something like, "Hey everyone, come see what this pervert is doing," through the speakers. I got pranked. Does that count? Was at a house party at my then girlfriend's place. She knew me really well and knew that I've got a fairly competitive spirit. The place is really dark. She turns to me at the dim light and says, "My name. I bet you can't fit an orange in your mouth and eat it all in one bite." Wasn't about to say no to her challenge, so I took her up on it. Only it wasn't an orange that she peeled but a lemon. Joke's on you. I love sour things. Nah, but really warheads aren't as sour as they used to be. Dude was harassing my ex because he used to have her cell phone number. Was being a real freaking creep. Anyways, I created an email address, signed up to Kijiji and placed an ad offering an 80 inches 3D TV for free with some excuse about a bad breakup and not wanting her to get it. I asked people to only text or call. I then went to bed and forgot all about it until the next day at work. I get a text from my ex asking if I had done something on Kijiji. The dude was begging her to take the ad down and apologizing. I checked the email and there were 5 pages of responses even though I had told them not to email but to call or text. Dude's phone must have been ringing constantly. I took the ad down and she never heard from him again. Bought a new TV after saving up for a couple months. Next day I played a video on the TV to make it look like it fell and was broken cracked, and my housemates all individually fell for it. Delighted with myself. In high school, there was a girl that was acting foolish and laying on top of a table that me and some friends were sitting at. Mind, this was one of those plastic folding tables, and we were in JROTC class in the rifle range having some end of the year free time. I then took it upon myself to fulfill a lifelong dream and tie her shoelaces together. The results were better than I could have ever imagined. My JROTC instructor entered the room and told this girl to get off the table, and that's when it all came together. She hoisted herself off the table with full confidence that her legs would work as they always do. Her uneven weighting of the table caused her and the table to flip over while me and the guys were just sitting there. At first I was the only one who knew of the shoelaces and was dying of laughter. My friends noticed and started laughing, and the instructor laughed some and then told her to do push-ups for causing a commotion. After typing this out, I realize it looks bad, but I assure you it was all in good fun. It was not mean-spirited, but it was evil. I was in Kuwait on the way to Iraq when our bird got delayed for 3 weeks. Well, Kuwait has these things called dub-dubs. A dub-dub is a lizard about the size of a small cat. They're utterly harmless, but when they get pee off they hiss loud as heck and do this whole threat display thing. Looks scary as crap. Well, being the enterprising marine that I was, I quickly set about catching them and placing them in any of the Air Force guys' stuff I could find unattended. Backpacks, lockers, desks, toolboxes, glove compartments, sleeping bags, you name it. I must have planted at least 3 or 4 dozen dub-dubs in my boredom. Some guy would go into his office, you'll hear a drawer open, I so god frickin' dang it, I hate these mother suckers so goddamned much. I was suspected as the dub-dub terrorist, but it was immediately dismissed by the Air Force guys cause he's a marine. He's too stupid. Yes I am. Suspect nothing and enjoy the new pet I left waiting for you in your pillowcase. Beautiful. One summer in college, I worked in the registrar's office, registering all the incoming freshmen. A prof who was a mentor to me was teaching freshman seminar and asked me to handpick a class for her. Straight A students, high sats, whatever. So I did. 15 students, all named Sarah. I wonder if the professor took it in stride after finishing attendance. I suppose you're wondering why I gathered you together here today. I used to work at a science tutoring center when I was in college and my gap year before professional school. One of the things we taught very often was anatomy, so naturally we acquired a few skeletons and various skulls with some variation in how they looked or were marked, etc. Well, I was closing one night, and I knew my co-worker was opening the next morning early, so before I locked up I assorted all of the skeletons and skulls in a welcome party near the front door. I had one immediately at the opening of the only door into the room with several backup skeletons and skulls just behind at a table together watching on. The best part was that you have to turn on the lights manually and that switches immediately to the side of the door opening. So when she reached down to turn on the lights she had to come face to face with some lifeless skeleton skull in the middle of the shady opening. Needless to say she screamed, and it was loud enough to make our boss come to see if she was okay. Woke up to some colorful texts LMAO. Still proud of that one honestly. Fate the dream for when I die. Let my body be used to royally screw with someone. I'd be a dong in both life and death. Kept both regular and honey nut Cheerios at the house because my mom and my dad each ate one type and hated the other. Unless you look close, they appear the same, so one day I switched the boxes. The looks were priceless. Should have mixed both boxes together. Once I asked a friend for another friend's phone number. He gave me a teacher's number. I then went on to send multiple messages in a fake angry tone to my unsuspecting teacher. Frick that diabolical genius of a friend. I hope you didn't reveal your name in any of those texts. Not me, but a co-worker collected a week's worth of hole punches, the little white circles that get punched out. Then he got our boss car keys and carefully stacked them on the edges of the vents in her car, set the AC dials to max and left them. My butthole friends did this to my car on my wedding day. They dumped thousands of those freaking things in my AC vents and turned the knob up full blast. So when my wife and I got in my car and started it, they went everywhere. They put so many in there that I guess some probably got trapped, and even months later, a few would come shooting out when I turned on my heat hack. Not sure if this will be seen, but my best New Year's was that of 1999. I was 9 years old at the time and I worked together with my dad to pull off the greatest prank in history. A few minutes before midnight I synced up a wristwatch with the countdown on TV. My dad pointed me in the direction of the breaker, which was in our garage, and showed me the lever to pull, which would cut all power to the house. Now I don't know if you remember the hype, but the year 2000 was supposed to destroy all of our computers and technology, sending us back to the Stone Ages. So the moment grew closer as I watched the seconds tick by on my wristwatch. It soon became apparent that I wouldn't need it, as I could hear all my relatives inside counting down 10, 9, 8, 2, 1. I pulled the lever at the perfect timing and everything went black. The first thing I heard was from my aunt, "Oh my god, IT hit, Y2K hit." I was only going to leave the power out for 10 seconds or so, but the lever was stuck and I couldn't get it back up for about 2 minutes. During which the whole time I heard my family freaking out. Then eventually they looked outside and started to wonder why our neighbors still had power. Haha, thinking back, I really wish we would have recorded this. Probably could have won $10,000. TL. DR pulled the greatest prank in history on New Year's Eve 1999. Y2K was a big deal back then, LOL, and this was awesome. Out with my flatmates at the pub. One had brought a bunch of mates with him and they were being quite loud, whereas I prefer a quieter meeting. Still, I was a bit tipsy too. So, I filled one of the spare shot glasses on the table with vinegar. I assumed when I passed it to him he'd smell it and realize, nope, he downed that crap, then coughed and spat it back into the glass. I created a fake uniform policy poster for my high school. It wasn't perfect, but people were idiots so they fell for it. It took everyone about a week to actually read the poster and see that it was obviously fake. Some people still showed up on the first day wearing the uniform that I designed. Two of my friends have never met each other. Before they spoke, I told both of them that the other is a bit deaf. They shouted at each other for a few minutes before they realized that I'm an butthole. I mean, this is the perfect prank. There's a little bit of embarrassment, but mostly just confusion on both of their parts. I made fake versions of Internet Explorer that turn your PC off when started in the ICT class at school. I print screened my friend's desktop and hid a bunch of his icons once. He thought his computer just wasn't responding. When my brother and I were in middle school, my brother liked to skateboard with our next door neighbor. One day, my brother and the neighbor took the sheet of plywood from under my brother's upper bunk bed. No one slept in the upper bunk. Out of the house and started making a skateboard ramp out of it in the neighbor's adjacent yard. My parents had explicitly told him that he wasn't allowed to do that. Now, in my defense, my brother teased me unmercifully, to the point of tears, on multiple occasions. So keep in mind that he had had it coming for a long time. Anyway, an evil little plan hatched in my brain. I ran to the upstairs window and yelled down at them, "Brother's name. Guess what? Mom knows everything and she is SOO mad." Then I slammed the window shut and ran to the stairs and waited while watching my mom read the newspaper. A few moments later, my brother walks in the front door looking worried and says, "Mom, I'm so sorry." My mom, who had no idea what was going on, said, "About what?" while slowly putting the newspaper down. "For making a skateboard ramp out of the wood from the bunk bed." "You did what?" At that moment, a wave of shock and realization swept across my brother's face and our eyes met. I let out the biggest evilest little sister cackle and ran into my room. We are adults now and still laugh about it from time to time. This sounds like something out of Malcolm in the Middle, haha. At my high school senior class picnic way back in the late 80s, I spread a rumor that the brownies I brought were pot brownies. Half a dozen kids went to the nurse because they were so stoned. Tricking people into thinking they are stoned is a classic. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.